Today, I'm joined by Mark Allen as a tee up to tomorrow. Mark is an Azure MVP. I've been working on the talk scene with Mark for some time. He's an all-round good egg, and he's going to talk to us today about taming your unstructured data with Azure Cognitive Searches. So, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm Mark. As Peter said, I'm an Azure MVP. I'm a freelancer, so I have nobody's particular wares to sell in this one. And yes, we were told that the sessions were going to be the future of infrastructure, the future of services, artificial intelligence, and IoT. So I got greedy, and I decided to put something in that was services with a bit of infrastructure and some artificial intelligence. So you can see from the word cognitive there that we're talking about cognitive services. So yeah, I mean, the core of this is Azure Cognitive Search, which is basically a search as a service product. So we're talking SaaS here rather than IaaS or PaaS. Now you can see it's got a whole load of different features there, but the main one that we're interested in here is just the fact that it's management free. So we're not having to fire this up on a VM or install it anywhere. It's just sitting there, and we just click a button and say, I want some search, and off it goes. So scenario one, say we've got a SQL database, and we've got a table in that SQL database, and it's got a whole pile of review information on it, which I've nicked off Kaggle in this particular case. And we want to be able to search through that data, and we don't like the built-in SQL full-text search because it's a bit clunky. So what we do, we go to the Azure portal, we click the I want an Azure Cognitive Search service, please. Click the button, create, and that's done. And because it's a service, we can provision that anywhere up from a free tier all the way up to really massive, and it scales to a certain amount depending on how much you're putting through it. So, we're not just putting this on a VM and paying for a VM. We click the button, it creates it for us, and then it drops us in at the thing that says import data. So we say, okay, here's my SQL database. It connects to the SQL database. It looks at it, it says, here's your tables. I say, I want to pick up the reviews table. So, fill in that tiny little form there, go next, and we end up with a screen there which says, okay, this is what I found in your database, in that table. So we can then go through and choose exactly what we want to do with each of those things. So in this particular case, it's reviews. So we've got some text fields, and we've also got a couple of numeric fields there for helpfulness and the actual score of the review. So we can tick on the ones that we want to be able to search. We can tick on the ones that we want to return in our search results. And we can also say which ones we want to do sorting by. So for instance, we want to just sort on the time, but we don't want to search that. And we can also say which ones we want to filter by. So for instance, we want to filter on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, and which ones we want to have as our facets down the left-hand side if we're doing that sort of search. So we tick a few boxes there. Hey presto, we can then go in and search for anything with the word great in it, and that will return us all the information there for reviews that contain great. So that's all well and good. It's so far so good. So Lucene. So we're not doing anything fancy here that we couldn't have done by firing up Lucene on a VM, but we've done it in say 60 seconds if we knew where we were clicking there. So that's sort of scenario one. But we'll drill down now a bit more into where we can go from there. So cognitive search has this basic pattern that it follows. First step is to ingest the data. So you can feed in data in pretty much any format. You can either pull it from just about any storage that Azure supports, or you can push it in from anywhere at all that you want to. Once you've got the data in, then it enriches the data, so it can apply what are called cognitive skills, or just skills in general, which are things that look at the data that you've pulled in and then process that to add extra information, annotations, so just extra information that you want to pull out of that. And then finally, once you've done that, then you can go to that final section where you explore it and can start searching free text or geographically or fuzzy searching or whatever you want to do. You can pull that information out. So just going back to the previous example, you might have noticed that there was a button in there which said add cognitive services brackets optional. If we do that, then it detects that we've got text in there, so it pulls out the text skills. So for instance, imagine we were a Canadian company. We can automatically translate all those reviews into French. We can pull out the key phrases so we can see the important bits of a review very easily. And we can do things like extract organization names so we can see where somebody's dissing a particular organization and maybe take that out to avoid lawsuits. So we go in there, we tick those 3 boxes, select French, and hey presto, there we are. We've got the whole list of things there, so we've got a review there. It's pulled out some key phrases, oatmeal, good thing, tastes, and you can see we've got a French translation of that review included in the results as well. And we can search that, so we can say, if we search for M, we just want to return a couple of the fields there, then we can see a couple of results there with the summary, the text, and the translated text, so we can see, j'aime épicé, I like spicy. So that's sort of part 2. We've now added some artificial intelligence in there just with a few more tick boxes. We'll go in a bit further now. So far we've been working with the structured data, but the title of this was your unstructured data, so we'll start looking at what we can do with that. So when we're ingesting, Cognitive Search does a thing called document cracking, which is basically to be able to take your document and pull as much information out of it as possible. Once it's got that information, it feeds it into a skill set. So the skills are those boxes that you've ticked there, so that's essentially all the things that is going to do it. And as you can see, that's an extensible pipeline, so you can actually feed your own skills into there. And then once you've got your enriched documents, then it feeds it into a search index, and that's where you can then start to pull your information out. So when we're ingesting, as I said, you can pull it from all sorts of places. So you can pull it from anything in Azure. So you can pull it from MySQL, you can pull it from a file share, you can pull it from the data lake, you can pull it from blob storage. And it supports a whole load of document formats as well. So you can pull in any old PDF, any Word document, Excel spreadsheet, JPEGs, PNGs, PDFs, XML, JSON, ABCs, XYZs, all sorts of stuff. And what the document cracking will do is we'll take any of those document formats and pull out not just the text, but also the metadata. So if you've got a Word document, it will pull out the document information. If you're storing something in blob storage or file storage, then it will pull out it can pull out things like the document creation date. And the other thing it will do is it will pull out all the images in that. So either the image, if it's a JPEG, or if it's an actual PDF or Word document, then it will pull out all the individual images in that and include that in the document, in the information that it's going to index. And once it's got all that information, all that text and metadata images, then that's where you can start feeding on all these skills. So it'll do anything from just as simple as text recognition, so just OCRing your PDF or whatever to turn that into text for you, through sentiment analysis, through recognition of people and objects in the images, and key phrase extraction, as we saw earlier. So it can then apply all of that, add that all into your index for that document, and stuff that all into the index for you to search through. So rather than just having a SQL table or what have you with structured information, you can start to feed in all sorts of other information. So you can take any pile of documents you want and get that all indexed up to a very thorough level. So just as an example here, scenario 3, this is a Word document I put together. It's got one of my favorite images of all time in it. I just love it. I've wrapped it with a bit of lorem ipsum just so that we're giving it no clues. But what I can do, I can feed that through. I tick the box labeled, some of the image recognition boxes, so for this particular case, celebrity recognition. And then I can search for Margaret Hamilton, and you can see it's picked out that Margaret Hamilton is one of the celebrities in that image. It's given us a caption for that image, Margaret Hamilton et al. Standing next to a person in a suit and tie, who had his face cropped so much it couldn't actually recognize who he was, which is quite impressive. And it also gives us some key phrases of things it's found in that photo, so necktie, man, glasses, fashion accessory. So purely by ticking that box, we've got a whole load of extra information there. So, if we had something with just pictures of things that we wanted to find, we could do that search on those documents. Now, this is our skill set. So, we've taken their face detection, object detection, text recognitions. We've done our OCR. We merged it in with the actual text in the thing, and then we've done some text-based stuff on that. But the other thing we can do, of course, is, as I mentioned, is custom skills. So this is where we can feed our own information in. Now, all a custom skill is an HTTP endpoint, so basically an API endpoint. So you feed in, well, cognitive search feeds in the information about the document that it wants you to analyze. You do whatever you want to that document, and then you return a big pile of JSON at the other end, which will then go into the index. So in this example, we're going to take that we've got a whole pile of invoices here, and they're all in that format, but they've all got different number of rows and different information in them. And what we want to do is to take our PDF invoices and get those indexed up so that we can actually see the details of the line items, so that we can see the tax rates, and we can get all that information and search on that information, even though at the moment this is pretty much just an image. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in some form recognition. So this is another service, a second service that's available within Azure Form Recognizer. And what that will do, that's an AI service. And what you do is you feed in a small number of invoices to it. It analyzes those, produces an AI model, and will then be able to take any other form in that format, so a form or a receipt or an invoice, whatever, pull that information out and return it to you into a structured form. Now, that structured form, at this stage, it doesn't know that those are line items, but it will pull out the company information, person information, and line item information in the form of a table. So what we're trying to do is to get from that to a fully structured thing, like on the right-hand side, which is the thing that we would want to be searching on. So part one of that, so we fire up a form recognizer service. Again, this is serverlessly priced, so we're only paying for it when we use it. So we train the model, which is literally just the case of feeding in the name of a folder where we've got some example images, send that off to it. It will come back and say, okay, I found 5 images in there, 5 PDFs in there. I processed those. Here's my model ID. Give me that model ID. I will work on any further invoices in that format. So that's all we have to do to set up Form Recognizer. Give it a few images, go. Next thing we do, we create our skill, so our API endpoint. Now, we could fire up a VM. We could fire up a big web service for this. We can deploy that to the RVM and do it like that. But this is something where we're going to feed it a whole load of stuff to get it going, and then it's going to come in on a presumably semi-regular basis. Later on, we'll get another batch of images, we'll get another batch of forms, and that will carry on. So this is a perfect case for serverless, where we just want to give it some code to process it, and we don't want to process it too. We don't want to spend time processing when we've not actually got anything to do. So what we do, go into Visual Studio Code, we say func new Python HTTP trigger. Creates as a project with a Python endpoint to respond to an HTTP request. We feed in about 100 lines of code there, and what that is doing is it's taking the PDF, it's throwing it at Form Recognizer, it's getting the results back, it's doing a little bit of mapping on that information and returning the JSON, which is actually the invoice information that we know is in there. We then right-click on that, say, deploy to serverless function, and 5 minutes later, you have yourself a serverless endpoint waiting to be connected to Cognitive Search. So we then connect that by giving Cognitive Search just a little bit of information on where that endpoint is and what its inputs and outputs are going to be, send that in, and then we can explore that. Just a quick summary here of the searching capabilities of Cognitive Search. So far, we've just done some free text searches, but it actually supports geo-based searches. So if you've got lat longs in there, you can do sort of distance-based searches. It's got fuzzy searching. It'll do autocomplete for you. It'll do regular expressions. It'll do wildcard searches. All sorts of stuff in there. So once we've done that and fired that up with, just that little bit of work that we've done there, we can then search through, get our information on our line items with our tax and totals and stuff. And we can actually say invoice line items ID is 49. So that will pull out just the invoices where one of the line items was product ID 49. So, something a little more complicated there than just a pure plain text search. Now, the other thing is that the other thing we can do is once we've got that structured information, we can actually create what's called a knowledge store. So here, while I was setting that up, in this previous bit here, that was the definition of the skill. But you can see down here, we were creating also a thing that says, right, I want to get the actual invoice, company, person, and line item information out of that. And what that will do is that will take that information and actually dump it into a database table for us. So we can see once we've done that it's automatically created there for us all our line items, all our people, all our invoice information in a database table. So once we've done that, we can, as well as the previous thing, we take that into a knowledge store, and then from that knowledge store, we can then do anything we want to do with that, previously unstructured and now structured information. So we can shove that into Power BI or further AI stuff as well if we want to. So so the message of that is we can take a whole pile of unstructured data. We can feed it into cognitive search. We can use a little bit of serverless infrastructure to connect that to another bit of AI, which will then process that for us, turn it into structured information, and we can come out from that big pile of PDFs with a management dashboard showing all the actual information that lives in those PDFs. So that's pretty much, just a very quick example there of what you can do if you actually use the cloud for what the cloud is good at, rather than just dumping VMs in it. So cognitive search, is a good product, but the main thing is, use services if you can, because they're very good and they get better. Glue them together if you can. Use serverless to glue them together. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're using these services, they're generally speaking consumption-based pricing or a base price plus consumption. So you only pay for the amount of time you're using. And there's some URLs down there if you care about actually going to look at the products. Okay.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. That was really, really great. I loved that a lot. That really tees us up nicely for tomorrow. So Mark's just explained how we can use a cloud-based service to quickly and cheaply add very, very complex searching to our unstructured data. And, trying to do that ourselves would be ridiculous in terms of what code we would try to write, or any third-party product that we might have utilized in the past would have been extremely expensive. And this is just teeing us up nicely for tomorrow, when we're talking about the range of different products and services that are available to us now that, again, ultimately help us get quicker to